We've got a crossover show today. We're talking with the host of Locked On Huskers. We're going to cover everything you need to know for this matchup week 1.
Hey,
You are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
Listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant. And we've got Derrick Pearson, host of Locked On Huskers, on the show as well. We've got a whole lot to talk about when it comes to this Huskers football team. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, Derrick. How's everything going? You ready for some football?
Oh man, this is what we do all this for. Is to set up for football season and get things started. The kids are back in town. The town is crazy. There's lots going on here in Lincoln. We've got a pretty big couple of days here. We got 90,000 watching volleyball tonight. So there's lots going on, but eyes purely focused on Minnesota.
Yes, I feel that. And that I saw that volleyball thing going on today too. That is awesome how the whole community is surrounding the volleyball program out there. Love that. But I'll keep it to football. I don't know if all my listeners want to talk volleyball right now. So what are we expecting from week 1? I'll stick to the offense to kind of kick this thing out. What are you expecting from the offense with Nebraska when it comes to so many changes with a new coach and a new offensive coordinator? Is there a style of play you're kind of expecting, or is it kind of a question mark from your end?
Well, there's an homage to the traditional Nebraska football, and that Nebraska fans want this back. They have shirts that say "Run the damn ball." that is a big selling point, especially in year 1 for Matt Rhule and Marcus Satterfield, the offensive coordinator. We have some tendencies that we can work from with Satterfield at South Carolina and such. But what Matt Rhule has done in the offseason in the transfer portal was possession, line focus, and then having a quarterback that can help them move the chains and adjust with his feet and then be safe and secure with the football. So Minnesota fans know as much about Nebraska's offense as we do here in Lincoln. We get to see minutes of practice, but we're basing it on the personnel, the whispers. And then every now and then Matt Rhule will slip up and tell you, hey, we're working on a certain thing. Right. But I would expect this is ground Nebraska in full headed to Minneapolis.
Awesome. That's what I would maybe kind of leaning towards. I know that Coach Rhule has talked about, that he was kind of hired for his Temple style offense and what he did there. Now other elements as well. But when he mentions that he really wants to run the ball and he wants to play good defense, outside of Anthony Grant, who we know is coming back this year and was a big-time running back for y'all last year, are there some younger names that have stood out to you on this roster in the running back room?
Well, the running back 1 is actually Gabe Ervin Jr. Okay. Gabe, the Georgia recruit, high school recruit, came in. He won the job a year ago before getting hurt. Put in tons of work, looks like a Sunday guy when you see him walking the streets and walking around in practice. Gabe Ervin Jr.'s guy, but I think you're going to get, in order for them to run the ball the way that he feels like he needs to, you're going to get a dose of not only Gabe Ervin Jr., Anthony Grant, who put up just short of 1,000 yards, and then the veteran, the multitasking, versatile Ramir Johnson. So those are the 3, along with, we'll sneak in a little jet sweep with Billy Kemp IV and Marcus Washington. You'll see a little bit of that as well. And then, quite frankly, being ahead of the sticks so that, Jeff Sims can put his foot on the ground, get 4 yards, move the chains, let's start over again. I think that's a real good message that, look, if PJ Fleck and that offense can't beat them up too bad if they're standing on the sidelines, they'll do it by ground Nebraska.
Yeah, it sounds like they both are going to want to win the time of possession battle in this week 1 matchup. Classic Big Ten football. But I am curious about that wide receiver room. I know Washington was dinged up a little bit during fall camp, but it seems like he's back. Betts is gone from the program now. So who are the names that have jumped out to you that it could be heavily involved in that passing game? And also, I'm curious on your thoughts on Malachi Coleman, the true freshman. Could he see any time this season, or is he more likely a guy waiting in the wings?
So to Nebraska fans, we're familiar with Marcus Washington.
Mm-hmm.
We're familiar with Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, who caught the first touchdown last season before things went left and he decided to leave the program. He's back. He's more mature. He's found his way. But to me, wide receiver 1 is Billy Kemp IV. Okay. And Billy Kemp had 60 and 70 catch seasons at Virginia. So being in the slot, they can move him all over the field, get him in motion. I don't want to call him a possession receiver. I want to call him a good route running, safe receiver. This is a guy that will, he'll get down, he gets separation, low throws, so there's no, tip drill nonsense going on. He'll help Jeff Sims feel comfortable from hash to hash. And then if they move him outside to the outer thirds, it's a quick throw and letting him be athletic. So those are the 3. The surprise in this thing, well, there's 2 surprises. One, that Xavier Betts, who would have been put in to start, would have been the guy, Joshua Fleeks, who was brought in by Nebraska to help Garrett McGuire, the receivers coach, kind of set the pace and tone. But he came into camp overweight, and they had to sit him down. Gotcha. But that's a veteran guy. To me, he would be the 4th receiver. But Alex Bullock has stepped up, a local kid whose brother also jumped up on the defensive side. So you've got 2 Bullock sons who are going to start their first games for Big Ten football in Nebraska. It's pretty insane. But those are the 5 names that lean in the most, that should get the most rep. And then you look towards the tight ends.
Gotcha. No, I love that. And that is helpful for the Gopher fans over here. Now, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the quarterback. I mean, that's the big name that everybody is kind of curious about over on Gophers Nation. So, I mean, over the course of his career at Georgia Tech, we've seen some ups and downs when it comes to turnovers. But do you think we'll continue to maybe see that trend? Or do you think that he's looked maybe the next step up when it comes to taking care of the football in early fall camp? How's Jeff Sims looked so far?
So the Jeff Sims story, when it comes to Nebraska, is about who he is as a person more than who he is as a player, as a quarterback. He has taken over leadership. Offensively, he's the guy. He's been the guy. And I think that was a big part of the decision-making process for Marcus Satterfield and Matt Rhule in choosing who quarterback 1 was going to be. There was a competition. Some folks in Nebraska and Husker Nation asked the question, why wasn't it Casey Thompson? That's for a whole nother podcast. But the reality is that they chose Jeff Sims, which tells me the style of play that seems to be the want and the need for this offense. That ball, time of possession, quarterback moving the chains. Again, this is Casey Thompson was good at it, but it beat him up. Jeff Sims looks like a Sunday quarterback. Some folks here have whispered Cam Newton Jr. that it's going to be that style of play. Late Cam, who put his foot in the ground. Strong arm. Accuracy is a thing. It's a real issue and concern. But what you can do with that is to put smaller receivers in traffic to make sure that, look, if I miss down. I don't miss up into chaos, tip drills, and high interceptions there. Jeff Sims, as an athlete, in the spring game, he was the best offensive player on the field, and it wasn't close. So his ability to maneuver around defenses, to avoid pressure, and then to frustrate defensive coordinators, the look would be trying to figure out what the 2 matchups are going to be with the linebackers and who's going to take on Jeff Sims and keep him inside the pocket instead of scrambling around causing chaos.
Yes, that is definitely my biggest worry with this Gophers team. I feel like we haven't really had to take on a rushing quarterback of that caliber. And that's not saying that Jeff Sims is only a rushing quarterback, because he's got a strong arm, like you've mentioned. But like, we haven't had to take on Justin Fields. We didn't take him on when he played for Ohio State. We haven't had to take on any rushing quarterbacks really outside of 2018 with an Illinois quarterback whom I mentioned on yesterday's show. So that's definitely a concern for me, and I think some Gophers fans out there. But let's shift the focus. We're going to go to defense. But before we do that, we have to talk about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. So if every job, every potential hire out there these days feels like a high stakes wager for your small business, you want to be 100% certain that you have the best qualified candidates and access to them. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the right people for free and faster than ever. So make sure you go on, you create your free job post. Then you can post a purple hiring frame on your personal profile picture to have others in your network help you find the right qualified candidates, and use screening tools like screening questions and other simple tools to help you get those candidates faster and interviewed quicker. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post a job about your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. All right, so we're shifting things to the defensive side of things. Now, Nebraska is coming in with a fully different system, a 3-3-5 defense, and I think that it brings some elements of mystery for the Gophers preparing for this game. Now, some folks are like, okay, well, they've got White, who's coming in at the defensive coordinator, and we played him against the bowl game, but Nebraska's personnel and the athletes they get and everything like that isn't the same. So he can do more with these athletes. So tell me what you've seen in this change of systems. What intrigues you the most with the defensive change?
Kane, I have to be honest with you about Tony White. Tony White gives me the greatest amount of hope for Nebraska football this season. His persona, his drive, his energy, the way he educates and teaches his players gives me hope. Greater hope, and that's no slight against anybody else on the coaching staff.
Right.
But Tony White just feels like the guy that no matter what needs to be done, he has a plan for it. And that's a rare thing, even in high levels of college football. That's not always the case. The 3-3-5, and he's familiar. He's familiar to Minnesota fans. You remember, that Syracuse defense held Minnesota to under 3 yards a carry. And Tony White is very specific about trying to take something away from his opponent. Take something away. The beauty of the 3-3-5 is that you're not beholden to anything that you can take away. If you decide, listen, I just don't want any deep throws, I'll take that away. If I've got a young quarterback, an inexperienced quarterback, I can throw drama at him, get his eyes busy by trying to figure out, is this a 3 front? Is this a 4? Is this a 5? Yep. Where is the rover going to be on the field? Because the rover always changes the balance of the field. Identifying the different personnel on the field. Nebraska, as you talked about, Nebraska has some unique talent, especially on the back end. The back end of Nebraska's defense, and that 3 and that 5, there are some dudes. The question becomes, what does PJ Fleck in Minnesota decide that they're going to try to do? What are the means of attack? And then are they willing to stick to it? Because if I would bet that Nebraska says we're going to take away the running game and make Kaliak Manis beat us with his arm. Like that's right. I would imagine that would be the plan. There's depth at both the linebacker and the defensive back rooms. There's depth in those rooms. The question, just like Minnesota, it's the big guys up front. Do you have the depth and experience that makes you feel comfortable walking into a Big Ten season? And Nebraska has that. Like they've got one horse who has just copious amounts of work. Ty Robinson's the guy and his leader, and he's a better version than he was a year ago, 100%. The other guys around him, that's where you have some question marks, and some of that will just be personnel, rotation, situation, and circumstance. That's what we're going to watch.
For sure. And like you said, though, even if that defensive line is kind of the question, that's the biggest question mark, that 3-3-5 can maybe hide some of those issues because you don't know where the pressure is coming from. It might not be coming from the defensive line. Their job might just be to take two and open up a crease for the linebacker blitzing down the middle. So it's definitely something that could be difficult, especially for a young quarterback like Ethan Kaliakmanis. I think it's going to be really interesting. But if you had to say, looking at this week's game, like there's one room, one position of concern for you in the Nebraska Cornhuskers when it comes to week one, what would that room be?
It's the receiver group from Minnesota.
Okay.
I having listened to you talk about this team and about this group, and then looking at the roster, and of course you're talking to hosts from other teams. But when you look at Minnesota's depth at receiver, different positions in the receiver group, the tight end group, catching out of the backfield, which is a thing that, again, is a game changer. That's part of the chess match that we're going to watch, is to see what Minnesota does with its backs out of the backfield, and whether mistakes can be created, because quite frankly, against the 3-3-5, the big fear is that you vacate the backfield and here comes a rover downhill, and then it's a battle of time and situation and space. I love the Minnesota receiving group. It's a group that I can get behind. I love the fact that you have runners that have had success, so you could lean on that. But I think that's a coordinator versus coordinator thing. And then you get to the real meat and potatoes of this game, which is those offensive lines versus the defensive lines. Can one of them impose their will? It's that Big Ten phrase. Which offensive line can impose their will on the other, on the defensive line? That will determine the outcome of this game, is who can control the line of scrimmage and not make mistakes. Turnovers will certainly play a huge part of how this game ends.
Yep, I'm with you 100%. I have to ask now, though, because I'm curious, with that rover talk that we've had a little bit on this defensive side of how important it is, what are your thoughts knowing that Nick Monroe, who is the Gophers cornerback coach, directly coached with Tony White over these last 3 years with Syracuse, having coached that rover and then the passing game, does that give you any worries when it comes to him knowing kind of maybe what to expect, or does it present an advantage to the Gophers, do you think? Or do you think Tony White kind of will have that in the back of his head thinking, you know what, I know he'll think this, so we can catch him off guard with this?
Well, the reality is that the skill and the talent on this defensive group at Nebraska is different than what it was a year ago. Even if you were using the same personnel and the same scheme, it would be at a different aptitude and a different level this year. If you're betting that that Tony White's tendencies don't adjust from year to year with personnel to personnel, then you're probably playing from behind. The worst thing Minnesota could do was to go back and look at Syracuse's play calls defensively and assume that Nebraska is going to use the same thing. There's Javen Buda-Wright, who's 6'5", 215 pounds, who moved from robo to linebacker. Well, guess what? If you're throwing the backs out of the backfield, it's different. You've got a whole huge machine out there. You're going to be able to identify is it going to be Tommy Hill as the nickelback on Minnesota's slot receiver, because that's a matchup. LSU Tommy Hill matches up well with Minnesota in the slot, so that allows you to do some things. Matchups and personnel will play this thing. There'll be a ton of game management. Tendencies don't really matter in game one. This is why game one bets are off, because the new coaching staff, new rosters on both sides, new coordinators, and then two offensive coordinators on the Minnesota side that have to bounce off each other and play off each other before they can get plays onto the field and agree with what the plan of attack is. So coaches know coaches. Schemes, all coaches know the schemes. Then you're just trying to identify the personnel. And in game one, you don't have any tendencies for either team. You don't know what they're going to do in this down and distance. So at some point, your playmakers have to make plays.
I feel that 100%. All right, Gophers fans, we are here with Derrick Pearson, host of Locked On Huskers. I've got a couple more questions for him. Then we're going to do quick predictions to wrap this one up. All right, so I have two final questions for you, Derrick, and then I want to know what your thoughts are on this game. The first question is, if everything goes the way it should for Nebraska, what happened? What went right, and how did they dominate in this game? And then my second question is going to be the inverse of that. So just kind of knowing what you're getting into here. But everything went right, so what happened for Nebraska to win this game? Everything
went right in that Jeff Sims stayed on the field, was healthy, is plus. Jeff Sims is plus. He's had a plus day with his feet. He's had a plus day with his arms, and that means don't turn the ball over, don't end drives. Nebraska's dream world is that every possession ends with a kick. As long as that's done, then they're in the game. They're in the game, and then you get a chance to win it. The other side of it is that there are two names that I'll put into play, MJ Sherman and Chief Borders. That those two players who will be all over the field in different situations, circumstances, and sometimes together, will have the ability to match up against a lineman or a running back who doesn't expect their business, and big plays happen. If they can get Callie Menace to actually put the ball in play in places that he doesn't want to do, like make him uncomfortable, make him think, okay, I see a thing that I don't really see. That's the perfect world for Nebraska. Oh, and by the way, that their freshman kicker has a great day. Like, those are the three big things for me. Don't turn the ball over. Keep your players healthy. Keep them to finish the game. And then, you know what? Be difficult defensively. Be in places and spaces that Minnesota's not expecting.
Absolutely. All right. So then flip side of it, what happened? What went wrong? What do you think is the cause for concern for Nebraska if they end up dropping this game?
Number one is dominated up front. If they're dominated up front on either side of the ball, it's a long day. It's a long day. The offensive line, Teddy Prohaska, is supposed to be a game time decision. At 6'10", 330 plus pounds of Teddy Prohaska. He's the best offensive line Nebraska has. If he's on the field, they're a better team. That's just the simple rule. But they have to win both sides. They have to win the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball. If you don't do that, you're putting too much pressure on players, new players, inexperienced players, and asking them to do too much. They need to be able to run the ball, and they need to be able to stop the run.
There it is. All right. So then the final thing I have for you is predictions. What is your gut feeling right now in the moment? How does this week one game end?
So most people know that I despise making picks, because especially in week one, because it's really just like, here's the thing. Yes, we have a new coach, 2 new coordinators, 7 new coaches on the staff. The 5 best players on the team are all transfers. We don't know. We haven't seen the starting group on the field together yet. We haven't seen this defense on the field together yet. What I know about PJ Fleck and what I know about Minnesota is that they have had recent success against Nebraska, no matter who it was. Mm-hmm. So here's what I expect. I expect a competitive game, and I expect late turnover to determine how it ends out. Whoever's in charge of that, that's who will win the game. But the whole thing is matchups make the competition, and there are things that Nebraska does well that Minnesota has difficulty with, and vice versa. Then who blinks? Who puts it on the field? Who puts it on the turf one time too many or misses a kick? That's how the game will be decided.
I can believe it. Like I said on yesterday's show, the past 3 matchups have been 1-score games. This isn't going to be a cakewalk game, no matter the changes, no matter what the differences are from last year to this year. It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a Big Ten battle, and I'm excited for it. Thank you so much, Derrick, for joining us on Locked On Golden Gophers today, and I am looking forward to this game. As always, be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube. Row the boat, Sky Go Gophers, and don't forget to subscribe.